All right, welcome to another show of the Research to Reps Roundtable. I am your co-host Pat Ivey, and joining me is co-host Ted Lambrinides. Ted, how you doing?
I'm doing great today, Pat. Looking forward to another great guest today. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. We are going to have RJ Ryan Jackson, who's at SMU. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself. He's going to tell us about himself and what he's been doing, his journey, what he's worked on. He has an interesting history and track record in the field of athletic performance. He's bounced around from different schools. He's had different roles, kind of a jack of all trades. He's even mastered a few, which is interesting. Usually, I don't know if I've done that, but I think that's pretty awesome. And joining us late, hopefully, we're going to have Janna Heitmeyer on as well. So this show is going to focus on nutrition and science, and we're going to talk about the practical applications of nutrition and science and training. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Ryan Jackson. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the nice introduction. I do not think I've mastered anything at this point, but it's pretty cool coming full circle in that my journey began with Coach Ivey in the weight room. So born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, went to the University of Missouri for undergrad, became really interested in training and nutrition and everything. I was lucky to have some really good connections and everything fell in place. And then I found out that there was a job called strength conditioning. And I had a connection with Coach Ivey to the point that I was able to get an internship there, to which I had no business starting off and being an intern in that weight room. I knew nothing. So I interned for 2 years. My last 2 years of undergrad, I got hired as a graduate assistant. I ended up staying on longer, to the credit of Coach Ivey, in that I was a GA for 2 years, but my undergrad coursework had so much nutrition in it that I kind of saw the avenue, and a lot of the great people I was around at Missouri, and Coach Ivey did a great job of always encouraging continuing education, diversifying yourself. I had a good avenue that I only needed to take a couple more classes to get into the dietetics program. And I saw how competitive strength conditioning was to get a full-time assistant job once you got done with your graduate assistantship. So I went ahead and got that coursework done during my 2 years of GA-ship, and I applied. I got into the program, and then that's when I went to Coach Ivey and I said, would you be willing to extend my graduate assistantship longer to cover dietetic school? He fully knew that, like, what that entailed was me being gone a lot. And I owe him everything because he agreed to it and he let me do it. And so I did the RD thing, dietetic school, clinical rotations, all that type of stuff, while still working as a graduate assistant strength coach in the weight room. I think my second to last semester, really my last semester of dietetic school, got promoted to a full-time position as a strength coach at Missouri. Did that for a couple more years. Our time ended there, and then I got a full-time assistant job in the weight room as an athletic performance coach at the University of Tulsa with Adam Davis. Did that for 2 years, and then got to go work with Coach Ivey again when he got the head job at Arkansas State University. Went there, worked for him, started dabbling. Towards the end of my time at Tulsa, I started doing more nutrition stuff, but I was primarily a strength coach. And then at Arkansas State, it became more of a blend where I was doing more stuff from the nutrition side, and did that for about 1.5 years at Arkansas State. And then Kaz Kazadi called me to come down to SMU to like truly do a dual role, where I was director of performance nutrition, but also an assistant strength coach with the football team. And that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's Ted. That's, when you think about how do you get in that role, is that kind of how you envisioned it?
I think that's a great way to get into that role. And I think anybody that's listening, that's, just starting out in the business, I think your advice for diversification and continuing the education process Ryan's a perfect example of that, and how, it makes you a more valuable asset to a program.
Yeah. RJ, what was it like being a strength coach, extending the graduate assistantship? What was your day-to-day like? So for someone listening to this and they're thinking, wow, I've always thought about nutrition, but I've got into it as a strength coach, or maybe vice versa. And they may want to think about trying to do it. What is it actually like? I mean, what is the grind? What is the day-to-day like? What's the commitment?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I honestly don't know how I did it. At times, I had some things working for me. So let me preface this. I had things working for me in that my undergrad coursework was a degree called nutrition and fitness. So I had knocked out some of the nutrition coursework that was within the dietetics program. Dietetics is a 4-year program, typically, if it's a coordinated program. So there's either a coordinated program, or you have to get a degree in dietetics and apply for your internship to sit for the exam. And there's not that many spots for that. So Missouri, luckily, was one of like 15 schools that's a coordinated program. So that means that you're able to do all the coursework and the clinical rotation internships at the same time. I'd already knocked out some of the coursework, so that lightened the coursework. Having said that, it was absolutely ridiculous. So essentially what I would do is I would go in there for the early morning training sessions. So be in there like around 5 or before or whatever, do those. And then I would have to pack a change of clothes, because I'd have to take off my gym shorts and t-shirt and get dressed into dress clothes. And then I would go to like 40-hour-a-week clinical rotation. So it would be like from 5 to the last minute possible. I could be in the weight room. I would get changed and go. So it would typically be like an 8 to 4 or 5 job. And then when I got done with my clinical rotation, then I would come back to the weight room, change back into my clothes, work with the teams in the afternoon or whatever my responsibilities were. Then I would go home and we would have homework and assignments and stuff like that for dietetic school. So I'd do that up until about 10 or 11 o'clock was usually my cutoff. If I didn't get it done by then, I was going to bed. And then I wake up and do it again. And then on the weekends, I would have to come in and take care of all my business that I wasn't able to get done work-wise. So that's what it was day in and day out for pretty much 2 years. I just like always felt like I was running somewhere else to another place and just kept going. I think it helped that I was in school. I just never stopped. So I went 8 years straight of school. By the time I was done with dietetic school, I think if you would take time off and go back into that, it was a lot harder. But since I started interning at Missouri in 2008, that's kind of all I knew. I was always working in the weight room and then going to class if I was in undergrad, or I would go to class when I was a GA, and then it just kind of blended into the dietetics thing. But it was absolutely crazy for 2 years. But I mean, I wholeheartedly believe it was worth it. And a lot of people, I don't really know anyone that got that opportunity that had their dietetic school paid for, and would leave during important times that you were, there's big things happening in the weight room that I wouldn't be there for. And then on top of that, I ended up traveling with football too during that time. And that was crazy, because my teachers told me when I got into the program, I wasn't going to get any slack because I worked in athletics. But then I ended up still finding a way to travel with the football team and do all that stuff. So crazy.
Yeah, RJ, in this crazy past 12 months we've been in the grab and go meal concept for athletes, what has been the biggest challenge for you as coordinating performance nutrition, over this last year?
Yeah, I mean, we've had to make adjustments to everything. Pretty much any like team meal type of setting, there is no more. So it's grab and go. I don't think that we observed as much impact on like metrics like body weight and body composition as we thought we would with that. And so, but that's still, it limits your options when it has to be grab and go. In our setting, the athletes are at least allowed to like pick out what they want from the catered food, but it's still grab and go. Can't go back and get more food. So like if you're a weight gain guy, that can help out a lot to be able to go back and eat more and all those types of things. Although I will say one outside the box deal that isn't really nutrition, but is centered around nutrition is the lack of the team meal, which is actually sitting down with your teammates. Even think about that. I think Coach Ivey can speak to this as well. Like as a former athlete, like team dinner, or even when we were coaches, like that's like a nice, relaxing environment when everything's so tense leading up to a game and not being able to like sit down with your teammates and joke around a little bit. I think that was something that like we didn't foresee happening.
Yeah. That's, you've seen a lot over the years. So you've seen how nutrition has become more prominent in training. I know that you personally, you get into different types of training. I know you've personally done triphasic training and all other sorts of programs. How important is it to understand the nutrition and performance and kind of where you, as the professional that are administering those services, how important is it for you to actually, I guess, be your own example?
Yeah, I mean, with nutrition, to me, and obviously this is why like I do what I do. Training and nutrition to me are synonymous. It's the same thing in that they're both centered around the concept, and sports is as well, the concept of delayed gratification, in that you don't train once and get stronger. You don't eat enough protein one time and get stronger. You don't eat a bunch of vegetables one time and feel better. It's something, so training, we know, is something you have to do day in and day out to get the adaptation you want. And then nutrition goes hand in hand with that, and that day in and day out, you have to check your boxes nutritionally, your habits, and all those types of things to get the desired adaptation that you want from that. And so that's where I think it is huge to train yourself, especially if you, number one, from a strength coach perspective, if you're going to ask your athletes to do some crazy stuff with bands and weight releasers and depth jumps and stuff like that, maybe you don't do it to the level they're doing it, but you need to kind of feel what you're asking them to do. And then on top of that, if you're a sports nutrition, sports dietitian practitioner, I think it's huge to understand training and know how training feels as well, to understand like what you're like really asking of the athletes to do and how nutrition fits in with that, and like how important it is and how much higher level than like basic nutrition advice that you would get taught in dietetic school. Because with like athletics, like what we're asking athletes to do is not normal. And so normal nutrition and normal, and we can get in, this is like a tangent we can get into later, supplement wise, because there's stigma on supplements. And sometimes, in my opinion, not overemphasis, but the food first approach to me at times is not seeing how lack of normality there is with what we do training wise with athletes and what we're asking them to do.
RJ, I got a call from a coach 2 days ago. Just he has an athlete that's with Ramadan, so we went over some training discussions from a sports dietitian standpoint. What advice would you give to athletes that are going through that?
Yeah, that's a tough case. I have never personally worked with a case like that, but I'm familiar with people that have before. And I mean, essentially, you have to fast from sun up to sundown, correct?
Correct.
So you're really just looking at a tight window that you're able to try to get enough food in. And that's where we kind of come back to this concept of sports nutrition is not like your basic nutrition and health. So like even like a skill guy in football who weighs like 185 pounds, if like you actually do the data and look at like what he needs to eat on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be like upwards of like 400 to 500 grams of carbs. And that is almost physically impossible to do. Like try it. And this is where we get back to like, like using yourself, like Coach Ivey asked me about using yourself as kind of a guinea pig in some way and trying these things out. Try to eat 400 to 500 grams of carbs from sweet potatoes and rice. Like you can't do it. You will be too full. Like just try eating 100 grams of carbs from sweet potatoes is very, very hard to do. So that's where you're probably going to have to err on the side of more processed foods that typically we're told are unhealthy and all these types of things, processed foods that are typically going to be high in carbs, high in fat. You can overeat those foods. I mean, that's also why there's an obese environment in America, is there's a prevalence of those foods, but those people aren't expending themselves to those levels. But in a situation like that, you're going to have to encourage some highly palatable foods, which are high carb, high fat foods, like donuts is an example. I'm not saying that that needs to be the base of their diet, but they're probably going to have to eat some things like that to kind of meet the energy demands of their sport. And I'm not saying just eat donuts and drink protein shakes. What I'm saying is that like you have to meet the energy balance or the energy demands of that sport. So yes, you need to eat your protein. Yes, you need to eat your fruits and vegetables, and you need to hydrate. But at some point, you're going to have liquid calories like Gatorade, things that are not as high in fiber, that aren't going to fill you up as more, to try to meet those caloric demands. On the other side, if potentially maybe they are someone that needs to trim their body comp and lose weight, you might be an effective way to limit their caloric intake, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So RJ, something I'm really passionate about is the longevity of the strength coach. How can we continue to be at the top of our profession? We know we need our bodies. Many strength coaches that have been coaching for a long time, you've got back issues, knee issues, elbow issues, because we have been the guinea pig for so long. And a lot of the older school strength coaches, this was pre-foam rolling, protein shakes. It may have been other forms of liquid carbs that was the recovery drink of choice. So things have changed. And I know I had a chance to experience and learn from you. We shared a house together at Arkansas State, and you were very regimented in what you do personally. And I know I've adopted several of those concepts, and they go against what is known as dieting. So what is the difference between lifestyle choices that you make on a daily basis based on certain principles, and what's the difference between that and dieting, and why is one better than the other from a longevity standpoint?
Yeah, I think from a longevity standpoint, and I'll probably kind of reiterate a lot of the same things, but I think working as a strength coach in some ways can be very beneficial for your health, and that it's a very active day. And that like there's days where I get like 20,000 steps. There was one day a couple weeks ago I got 15,000 steps by like 7:30 or 8 a.m. And that should, on that spectrum, is going to set you up health wise, and that there's a magical number, and people can argue the research of where it comes from, but getting 10,000 steps a day is a good baseline for general health. And so going along with that, longevity wise, like trying to train, but like being smart about the way that you train and not totally blowing yourself up so that you're not able to coach to the best of your ability, which is what you're hired to do. But to me, the nutrition kind of goes hand in hand with that, and finding a way to instill consistent training habits, just like you would have consistent nutrition habits. So whether it wouldn't be like unless you're like really trying to lose weight, dieting, it's more trying to find nutritionally what's the most sustainable approach to you that you are going to feel the best body weight at, you're going to feel the best. And just ingraining those habits. For us, when Pat and I lived together, it was every Sunday we cooked, and that's like technically we were meal prepping, but like we didn't have like a bunch of like what do you call it, Tupperware with like, this is where your protein, this is where your vegetables, this is where your carbs are. We just grilled and made a bunch of meat. We fried a bunch of plantains. Made a bunch of like potatoes, and then you just put those all in Tupperwares. Like to him and I, that was sustainable for us. Like I don't think sectioning, maybe for some people, sectioning off like 24 little Tupperwares is sustainable. We just put it all in a big Tupperware and then we ate from it throughout the week. That's like a sustainable approach. That's not dieting. That's setting yourself up for success, and that you know that during the week you're not going to have time to cook, or you're going to have some stuff pre-prepped that you can heat up quickly at lunch. Did that kind of answer the question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What have you found in terms of resources other than yourself for your athletes that want additional information on nutrition?
Man, feel like a egotistical here, or I generally just try to get the answer for them. I have found Precision Nutrition. They have like some really good infographics on some things that help build they like the pictures and the colors that they use are really good at reinforcing some things. Yeah, that's the main one that comes to mind when I refer to like infographics or maybe a specific type of diet, like an elimination diet. I've referred to Precision Nutrition before. I guess I try really hard to do continuing education things and building those into the athlete education so that I can be the referral for that. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that come to mind was I did Dr. Mike T. Nelson's Flex Diet Cert last spring during quarantine. And that one was really good about motivational interviewing. And instead of you meet with an athlete and you have them show you what they ate, and you see that they haven't eaten enough protein, instead of you saying you need to eat more protein, you present them with 5 ways in which they can eat more protein. They could either track it, like with MyFitnessPal, which is typically not what you're going to want to recommend, because that goes back to Coach Ivey's point about dieting versus just lifestyle nutrition. It's like you're trying to find the smallest lever you can push to improve performance or recovery. But so like amongst that list, it's like track, or it could just, or the simplest one that we found the best results with is, did you eat a high quality protein source 4 times a day? And you show them what high quality protein sources are, and you say, how, rate this list of items, and there'll be other ones. Which one are you most likely to do? And then you teach them how they're going to go about doing that.
RJ, you talked to Ted, you had a question?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh,
I
RJ,
just thought,
yeah,
go ahead.
You talked about nutrition education. What does that look like when you're working with athletes?
It's really going to depend on the setting. In the collegiate setting, there's going to be a lot of really the best time to do it is when you have the whole team together. And if we want to hammer home that nutrition and training are synonymous, then typically at the beginning or end of a training session is going to be one of the best ways, especially in my role. We're able to use the examples of what we're doing in the weight room to reinforce why we want to do these things nutritionally. And you're able to kind of get a blend of exercise, phys, and sports nutrition education at one time, so that they're able to make the connections between the two. Sorry, I got Bo's barking there a little bit. I got two dogs. I left the door open and hopefully they wouldn't bark too much, but
Sounds like they need some meat.
yeah, they're used to Coach Ivey always making salmon. He always gave them the salmon skin. They must hear his voice. But I do wholeheartedly believe that you can make a huge impact education-wise on like one-on-one settings, in that like you're able to like really sit down and take your time, because in the college setting, time is always an issue. I'm not going to have that much time to speak to the team at the end of a training session, maybe 5 minutes. And there's so many different individuals in the group. Some of the concepts might not apply to one rather than the other. And then what generally happens is you might spark some interest, and then you have like 2 or 3 guys that come up and try to talk to you afterwards. And even then you're a little bit rushed because you might have another training session. So I'm big on one-on-one meetings. You're able to really individualize things, break things down more in a way that you're not able to break down when you don't have as much time with a team setting. And another way in which we did it when we were at Arkansas State that I thought was valuable with the time aspect was we would do our on Mondays, we would block off time in the afternoon that all the team could go to. And Coach Ivey would do sports psychology, mental conditioning content, and I would do a little bit of nutrition, lifestyle content. And there you're able to slow things down a little bit more and break things down more and have more of an opportunity to answer questions that they had.
What recommendations you have for the athlete that say he's got a 6 a.m. workout, they get up at 5 o'clock, and then they say, what should I eat? What should I drink before the 6 o'clock workout? Do I have something or do I wait till after the workout?
Typically, I mean, it's dictated by the session, but I would say 90% of the time you're going to want to eat something before training. We can talk a little bit about the 10% where you might not, but typically you're going to want, optimally, this is in a perfect world, some sort of protein source. The issue with that, if it's going to be a really high intensity session, that it can be hard, what you're not going to eat like chicken in the morning. So it's essentially going to be probably a Greek yogurt or a protein shake, something that's easier on the stomach, easily digested. And I think that's important in that you actually have protein in your system before you start training. So you have the amino acids broken down to enhance the recovery from the session. And then from there, you want some sort of carbohydrate that's easy on your stomach. Hello.
Hi.
We're talking about optimal nutrition for a 6 a.m. workout when you wake up at 5 a.m. So you have some sort of protein source if you can stomach it, and then some sort of carb that's easy on your stomach, whether that's optimally you would want a fruit like an apple or banana, but also like applesauce, gummies, something simple like that is going to give you a quick source of energy for the session you're about to perform.
Cool. Thanks, RJ. Well, as you can see, we have our other guest has arrived. It's only taken 1.5 years to get her on the show.
Maybe a little longer. Yeah.
Maybe longer. So Ted, this is Janna Heitmeyer. She's the director of sports nutrition at the University of Georgia, and excited to have her on. So, Janna, can you tell us and the listeners a little bit about yourself, and whatever you don't tell them, I'm going to tell. So you might as well do it your version.
You know, I like to go very short version of myself. I started out as a strength coach back in 2004 as a graduate assistant. And about, I would say, a year into that, we had one of our full-timers leave, and I took his spot, and he was in charge of ordering the Powerade. And while he was doing that, I had an interest in nutrition anyways, but it kind of sparked it even more. And we kind of started thinking, hey, we should start doing some nutrition education. Hey, we should start doing a little bit more nutrition services and providing some more food and shakes and things like that. So we essentially just kind of started creating our own nutrition program within strength and conditioning. Then in 2011, I had gone back to school and got my dietetics degree and graduated with that. Became a full-time RD/strength coach, kind of. And then ever since then, I've been kind of doing nutrition. I like to keep it interesting and dip my toe into the strength and conditioning waters every once in a while.
So obviously you had the passion for nutrition all along, and then you saw an opportunity to capitalize on that. I want people that the younger versions of RJ and Janna, so we're only talking 10 years, but what do they maybe a few more,
maybe 20.
yeah. So how
10-ish.
yeah. So how do you go from saying, well, I'm going to be a strength coach to nutrition?
I think that it starts with kind of exploring your options of what you can do and what you can't do based on where you're at. It's hard because a lot of times as a strength coach, you already have a job, and the thought of going back to school is very intimidating, because you have to go back to school and it costs money, but also how are you going to do that and keep working at the same time? So I think it takes a really good communication between your boss and your department heads to just kind of discuss what your vision is for what you're foreseeing and how it's going to benefit them, to be able to map out all of the obstacles, et cetera, they're going to get in your way, and just make sure you have the support to do it. Most people want a 2-for-1, I would say. I mean, to me, that's a good selling point for them, is just, it's a 2-for-1 situation. You have a strength coach and a dietitian at that point. That way you're getting double the benefit if they can just back you for 2-3 years while you get the program done.
Yeah. RJ, what questions you have for Janna? Because I know you can come up with a good research kind of to practical application question that can kind of, spark that genius inside of her to come out.
I don't know if I can ask Jane questions. I learned everything from her.
RJ's the science guy. I'm just the let's make this happen person.
Man, I don't know what's your like go-to strategy right now? One of the most difficult populations to get to lose weight is your interior offensive and defensive linemen, and a problem that we run into all the time is especially a kid that came in huge already, and then you put him in the most structured training environment he's ever had, and you provide him with more food than he's ever had. What, in your experience, since the last time we've worked with each other, have you found that really helps with a guy like that needs to lose body fat?
Teaching them that one meal a day is not okay. I mean, honestly, it just comes down to them understanding that them eating more food is not going to make them fat, but they have to choose the right food. So it's really what it is me coming around and building a really good relationship with them, but also just I'm in their face all the time. So I'm constantly around them. I am with them at all the meals, and you're just walking them through essentially a retraining of how to eat. Because then once they start to feel a little bit of progress, they'll start to buy in a little bit more, and they'll be able to carry that forward, and they'll be able to see progress really fast working with a dietitian because they've never done it before. And so they're thinking, I'm going to drink a Coke and eat some leftover beef jerky in my car and I'm good. Like, that's a meal. I can do that. And the littlest change will make the biggest difference for them to get them started in a good way. So I think as long as you can start showing them a very small piece of positive benefit and then start translating that to the field, and then get the strength coach to keep echoing that, talking to the position coaches to echo that. And once you get everybody on board, they'll be able to do it a lot easier. Unless they're hard-headed, and then you have to kick them in the face, but that's fine. We have those too.
What advice do you have for an athlete, and it could be male or female, where there's a conflict between, say, physique, appearance, and performance, where they're trying to get to such a low percentage of body fat, but it may not be in the best interest of how they're performing in their particular sport?
You have to do a really good job of meeting the athlete where they're at. So a lot of times that means getting all the way to the level of like where they are and what they personally want as their personal goals, finding out why, how do you feel at that? Have you ever been there? Like where's it all coming from essentially? And then working from there to what about when you were this body fat? How were you playing then? What did that feel like? How was your performance? What are the differences? And just showing them like, you're trying to do this, so you say, for performance benefits, but you are competing at your best at this body fat percentage right now. As we've decreased this, you're starting to tell me that you don't feel as good anymore. Your energy isn't as high. All these other things that's why you're coming to see us again, is like, I want to get lower because I want to get my energy back, my quickness back. And just showing them actual firm numbers that show them like, here was your stats when we were this body fat percentage from me. Here's what your weight room stats were at that time. Here's what your sports stats were at that time. Now let's look at where you're at now, and let's look at all those stats too. What are you seeing? And then even going, if you have a way to do body composition or body fat, just being able to say like, here's where your fat is, here's where your fat was then. It was higher before, but your muscle mass was also higher before, and now it's lower. And you're complaining about not having speed. Well, muscle is the thing that creates the speed. So if we can get that back on, just kind of showing them actual numbers versus my own opinion or a coach's opinion tends to help them a little bit more. They want legit, like, show me the numbers and prove it.
Yeah. And I think that's also a conversation that typically with those types of deals where either male or female, and they start becoming obsessive about a certain number or a certain body fat percentage, a lot of that is going to come back to comparison. And great quote in relation to comparison is the opposite of joy or thief of joy. They're probably comparing themselves to someone else, whether it's someone else on the team, or they're comparing themselves to the way someone looks that's a athlete in their sport, or worst case scenario, they're just comparing themselves to, say, a CrossFit athlete that looks ungodly lean. And the thing that they need to understand is the only comparison that matters, and what Janna was saying, is themselves. Like, where do you perform at your best? And what it takes to get to some of these body fat percentage levels or weight that some athletes desire is not performance enhancing. It's detrimental to their performance. Like, everyone is individual. Some people are just born not to like have a six pack. Like, you can do it, but maybe that's something you do when you get done competing, because it's not going to help your performance. People are born a certain way. They have genetics that kind of determine how they're built. And with an athlete, it's about performance. Like, where are you performing at your best?
Especially females that try to get back to where they were in high school. That's what I always want to hear is, well, when was the last time you were at this weight? Well, when I was in 9th grade. Yeah, well, you're not anymore. So now let's welcome to our real life. This is your real new body now. This is your adult self. So how are we going to work best within that frame and make yourself most successful and be happy with where you're at too?
So
Guys don't usually do that.
Yeah, I'm reminded now just how good Janna was at what she does. You have the ability to get them to tell you the truth. You have the ability to get athletes to tell you the truth, to tell you things they would not tell me as a strength coach. They wouldn't tell their position coach. I was going to ask a question about body composition testing, but I don't know which way to go now. Because I remember when you were operating the DEXA, you would say it's like a truth-telling device. They would lay down, and all of a sudden the truth comes out. So just talk about body composition, take it in any direction you want to go. And then RJ, if you could follow up with any type of science based on body composition.
Yeah, your giant brain, RJ, bring it. Body comp is still one of my favorite things to use in any situation. I use it for eating disorders. I use it for Just measurement tools is like a baseline for everyone. I probably will never stop doing it unless they make me. I think my philosophy is a little bit different when we're doing it as well, because I believe in sharing the numbers with everybody because it helps educate. You share iron numbers with everybody. You share cholesterol levels with everybody. Like, we talk about that amongst an entire group, but all of a sudden we get to body comp and now we're not allowed to talk about it with coaches, and we're not allowed to talk about it with strength staff, and nobody's allowed to know, and it's a taboo situation. And I'm trying to make it so that it's not. So my philosophy has always been, which has been great because it's always been supported, is that everybody gets to know until they don't deserve to know anymore. So if you're going to abuse the numbers, then you don't get the numbers. But if you can see how this fits into the whole entire picture, it's going to help the strength staff. It's going to help the kid. It's going to help the athletic trainer. It's going to help me. It's going to help their position coach. It's going to help their head coach. It's going to help everybody see, like, where can I best perform? Where is too lean? Where is too heavy? How much muscle mass is too much? Am I overtraining myself? Like, all of those numbers pop up as you're doing things consistently over time, and you can compare from year to year. So to me, it's something that I want to be able to use forever. I've used it with eating disorder kids where I was like, this is where you were before, and you were an All-American. And now you're 10, 15 pounds down in muscle mass, and you say you feel great, but your tennis stats aren't saying you feel great, but it's an actual number for them to see, like, no, I feel strong, but do you? So just start, it's a really good conversation starter, I think. And I think it can help. It's immensely helpful, I think, as a strength coach to have that information, but also just to be able to follow along as an athletic trainer too, to just say, okay, I was healthy at this point, then I got injured. Here's where I'm at. I felt best at this. Let's try to get there. As I'm going through that process, where am I, like, what am I changing? What things do I need to do to make sure that I can get back there in a healthy way?
Yeah, and from the science side on body composition testing, there's several different ways of measuring body comps. You can do skin calipers. You can use like an in-body or a DEXA. There is underwater weighing, but that's not really feasible in the athletic population. And the one that's the bod pod slipped my mind. The biggest thing with any body composition testing is trying to be as consistent as possible. Whether that's with skin calipers, you probably want to have close to the same people testing that. And I'm not saying that's one person testing an entire team, but maybe you have the team split up amongst people that know how to use skin calipers. They always test the same person. And then with the more advanced ones like the DEXA, optimally, you would like to be in the same, somewhat of the close to the same state that you were when you pre-tested, when you tested before, because there are standards of error with the body composition tests. And even with the DEXA, you can influence the results at times with what you eat and drink before. That's going to give you the most consistent results. But it's still, even if you don't do that, it should be able to give you a pretty good picture. Like she talked about being a lie detector test of like, what were like your true habits over the last X amount of weeks from the time that we tested you.
But the biggest thing is too, is that it doesn't really matter what you're using. Like if you're using InBody, great. Okay, the numbers aren't exactly perfect and you're not going to get exactly maybe the right body fat percentage, like the error will be different. But if you're consistently using the InBody, then you have consistent numbers to compare from. And that's going to be the more important than even the number doesn't really matter. That's what I tell kids all the time. The number does, I don't care what the number is. I care what it's telling me is happening to your body as we go through a season. So as long as you're getting the same measurement, you're using the same instrument to measure every time, that's giving you way more valuable information than the actual number overall.
Got a question for both of you. This is, you'll hear somebody, a coach will say, yeah, I'm doing this intermittent eating plan. And somebody says, well, I eat one meal a day, then I just drink like tea or coffee. And then you hear, when you read through the literature, it's no, you're eating normally within an 8-hour window. So if you had to educate your athletes that have asked you about intermittent dieting or eating.
RJ's answer is probably nicer than mine. Go ahead, RJ.
I'll be honest. I think in some cases of trying to lose weight, for some people, because if someone's asking you about intermittent fasting, they probably want to lose some fat or they want to lose some weight. In my experience of doing it, I find it easier to not eat as opposed to trying to restrict what I eat when I eat. Having said that, I'm not everybody else. And so with any fad diet, this is a huge problem in nutrition world right now, is that people find a diet that they like and then it worked for them. So therefore they think that it should work for everybody, and not everybody is you. So I do think that in an athletic population, if you are really smart about it, there might be some people that would benefit from doing fasting because it's easier for them to not eat for a period of time, say in the middle of the day. And then when they go out to eat with their friends or their family, they don't have to freak out about what it is I'm putting on my plate. And if it's like my favorite restaurant, I can kind of get what I want. Because if you restrict a certain amount of hours, it can be really hard to get enough food in that window of time, which goes to our discussion about Ramadan at the beginning. But you have to you have to think it through pretty hard. If you're going to do that with an athlete, you better understand what their practices are like. And you better set them up for success, in that, like, you're not having them fast before a hard training session. You're not having them fast for a tough practice and all those types of things. It can be hard to work around, and is optimally probably not the best thing to do in the college setting, except for a small population.
See, he's nicer than me. My answer is no, you're not doing that. And then we talk about, if you can't even do this one thing that I've asked you to do, if you can't take your vitamins every day, what makes you think you're going to be able to stick to this? So our biggest thing, I think, is to not set you up for failure or disordered eating. And a lot of times that's just a starting point of disordered eating, is what I'm seeing. And again, I'm talking more Olympic sport athletes at this time, but if that's what you're wanting to do, it's because you're looking for a shortcut way. So if you can't even do what I've asked you to do previously, like you can't take a protein shake or you can't eat vegetables at your meals, then what makes you think that you're going to be able to stick to this either? Can we try something else? So I very rarely have had anyone stick with it past that conversation. But if they do, okay, well, then here's what you're going to have to do. And let's walk through the plan of what it's going to look like. And then it's usually a day or two when they're done. So they can do that when they're done and gone.
I have a question to ask you. I hope you don't let me down, or maybe I'll feel bad about myself. But is faster still relevant?
100%.
So now we got to talk about what faster is. So we came up with an acronym. I don't know how long ago it was, but
A long time
ago. So we came up with an acronym to help us as athletic performance staff to be able to memorize it, so that we could help our athletes to memorize it and then do it. But we wanted to come up with principles. So F was fruits and vegetables. A was always hydrate. S was start with breakfast. T was think lean protein. E, eat often. R was rest and recover. That's not written down. That's from memory from doing it so many times. So why is faster still relevant? And why is it important, or how is it a good guide?
Because it applies to you from birth till death. So it's not just something that I have to stick with when I'm an athlete. It's not something that I have to stop doing. It's not complicated. It's literally 6 things that I have to know. And a lot of those are just intrinsic things that you're already doing. So it's really just, if I'm looking at that list and those are, okay, so my nutrition person tells me that I have to think about how many topics you talk to them about. It's like 52 topics minimum a year. And I'm supposed to remember all that. Like, they don't even, as soon as I start talking, they're like, and I'm over here. Like, the only thing I want you to remember is these 6 things. Okay, well, I already drink water and I already eat breakfast. So those 2 are already off the table. What's the things I need to focus on? It's just a really good checklist that they can pull out at literally any point in time. If I'm an athlete, if I'm coaching, if I'm a parent, if I myself am trying to do something, if I'm a kid, if I put it to my kids, I talk about it in elementary schools. Like, there's so many applications to the basic nutrition principles. And it's truly the only things you need to know until you've mastered those things. And if you're ready to move on to the next level, then we can do that. But that's all you have to do, in my opinion. to make sure that you're getting everything you need nutrition wise. RJ disagrees. Go, RJ.
Oh, we still have the FASTER acronym, but I changed what all the letters mean. So, and I am not concerned as much with the athletes memorizing the acronym. I'm more concerned with them doing actionable things. So it's like the foundation of our nutrition education, but we try to gear it towards more like the intervention list of like, which of these 5 things are you most likely to do this? So we changed the F to fuel like an athlete, which is knowing what carbs, protein, and fat are. When you look at a plate, you know what they are, and you know what those foods do for you. The A is always know when and where. So when you wake up at the beginning of the day, do you know when and where all your meals and snacks are coming from? The S is still start with breakfast. T is take hydration seriously. That's simple enough. E, every feeding contains plants and protein, which is protein and fruits and vegetables. So every meal and snack contains fruits and vegetables and a protein. And then the R is still rest and recover.
You just had to be different, didn't you? You just had to be different.
I
Ted,
had so many people reach out afterwards though and ask for that again. Like ask for, can you send me all the stuff that we did? Like, can you send me all the FASTER information so I can use it with my high school kids or my, D2 college kids? Or there's still to this day, there'll be people that randomly come back and I'm like, were they on the team? When was that? 2004? Good grief. Okay. Asking for information about like, hey, can you send me this? And I'm like, here, FASTER booklet. Here you go. Done.
Ted, you got a final question? I think we're close to wrapping this up.
I'll use a very similar final question here, Pat. Could each of you recommend some reading books to our listeners?
Oh, you're in trouble. Go ahead, RJ. I'm gonna pull mine out right now.
Don't ask her about what she's reading and her reading habits.
Man, nutritionally.
Well, it doesn't have to be nutrition. It could be anything.
Well, I can't tell you that.
Man, I read some good books recently. Most of them are going to be training books. Speed Strength by Joel Smith is very good. Strength is Specific by Chris Beardsley is outstanding. In-depth understanding of strength. Anatomy of Agility by Franz Bosch was very good. I like, from a nutrition side, Dr. Mike Israetel, he does Renaissance Periodization. His RP diet book is really good. Dr. Lane Norton has a book called Fat Loss Forever. It's not just about fat loss. It's just like truly understanding nutrition and body composition changes. And it's not a book, but if you would follow Dr. Ben House, he has a PhD in nutrition. He puts out a lot of really good content in relation to the general population, but also the athlete population. And he's doing some high level stuff. I'm currently working through his continuing education, which is called Bro Research, but it's actually really high level. And he's working on getting enough people to do research on highly trained people from a nutrition side and training strategy side. So those are some of the big resources I would recommend.
I'm not going to give you any nutrition ones because that's not really my job. Focus has changed a little bit into more of a leadership, like how do I make my staff better? They get to know all the nutrition stuff and teach me that, but I want to teach them how to be better leaders, people, whatever. So my list is very different. However, one of them is The Remix by Lindsay Pollock. It's talking about like, it's the new Generation IY book, like talking about how you lead a multi-generational workplace. Mindset by Carol Dweck. Where'd I get that from, Coach Ivey? Grit by Angela Duckworth. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Atomic Habits. If you haven't read that book, super great. Yep. So you see this, look at this. I'm doing my, I don't know if I can flip this around. Well, this is my thing right now that I'm looking at.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. I do read books when we were training in science.
Yes. Tribe of Mentors is really good. by Timothy Ferris. It's basically, he asks the same questions to a whole bunch of people and they give their answers. It's really good. Coach Ivey, do you remember when we watched that presentation by BJ Fogg about how you do push-ups by the toilet?
Oh,
And that's how you start habits, like tiny habits.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep.
He has a book out called Tiny Habits now.
Right.
Dare to Lead by Brene Brown is awesome. No Ego by Cy Wakeman, also really good. And Radical Candor is probably my favorite book so far, which is just a leadership, how to be a manager, what you need to pay attention to. Those are my latest so
Do you
far books
still
for you.
read one book per day? I forgot what it was, something crazy like that.
I would say I average about 5-ish a week still.
She used to actually, you were the only person I knew that actually needed a library card.
When I found out that my library was online, it's over. Yep. And I have finally subscribed to Kindle Unlimited. You better believe it. I fly through books now.
I don't have anything else. I'm so happy. I'm just so happy to have you all there. You all are my family. I love you all. I appreciate everything you've always done for the family, for me, and Ted. Man, it's always good to be around good people. I'm glad you're able to continue to be with us on these Research to Reps Roundtable podcast.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. Do you all have
The triple
anything?
R.
You have any questions for me or Ted or anything? All good.
All good.
Well, appreciate your time. You all take care. Hopefully we'll catch up one day. Maybe we'll do a reunion one day. Maybe we should do a Zoom.
We need to do a reunion Zoom.
A reunion Zoom.
A reunion tour.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, y'all have a good day. Appreciate you. Love y'all. Take care.
All right. Thanks for
See you
having
later.
us.
Take care.